Welcome to today's demonstration on change and configuration management using Windchill 10.1. I am Sriram Subramanian from Barry-Wehmiller International Resources, and for the next 50 minutes I'm going to explain how Windchill can help you manage a product development change that happens inside an organization and how assembly configurations could be managed based on that. Uh, in every product development organization, there will be a lot of process that helps them to mature a product from a conceptual stage to the stage where the product retires from the market. And in the various processes that's been listed, change and configuration management process forms a key element that starts from the conceptual stage and goes all up to the stage where the product retires from the market. Um, Basically, change and configuration management forms key when a product evolves based on the customer requirements and demands. The inputs could be a problem from the customer end, or it could be an enhancement to ensure that the market share is maintained in terms of the product, and it can go all up to creating new configurations for the product, creating a change history for the product, how and what happened in terms of the product change, and also it involves the quality, the manufacturing planning, the verification validation team in terms of the entire change process that happens. In a change management scenario, we have various stages, which starts with basically the product manager looking at the product and probably creating something called as a problem report, which is the start for any change management process. From the problem report, there 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 would be a change coordinator who is going to review the problem report and then understand if there has to be a change request created for the problem report, and that change request is then analyzed by the change review board, which decides whether the change request is going to be a feasible enough solution based on the cost involved, based on the manufacturing changes involved, and so on and so forth. Based on the decision from the change review board, the change request is then matured to a stage called a change notice, where a change implementation board sits and understands the implementation tasks required for the change to happen. It could be the manufacturing, it could be the FCAD design tasks, it could have ECAD design tasks, it could have manufacturing tasks like changing of jigs and fixture for it, changing tooling information, changing the machine for it, and so on. And finally, there has to be a change audit that takes place, which tells us that the change is completed successfully, and a change auditor completes the change process, and the product gets released to the next level. So that is basically the scenario that happens in a change management system, and it also effectively involves integrating these changes with the ERP system, because ERP has to track the manufacturing processes later on. Um, what we're going to see now is the first step in the change in the configuration management system, which is basically understanding the overall change system inside Windchill, which starts with reviewing the pending changes in Windchill, visualizing the design, which is also very key in terms of the change management system, because any change that happens in a system has to be understood in terms of the design perspective. So a system like Windchill has to enable users to visualize the design irrespective of the CAD application present, and also we would look into something called as change monitor in this demo section, which is going to help us understand the number of changes that happened over a particular period of time, which is again key in a larger organization where there are numerous changes happening, and a track and a tab on how many changes happened in a specific period of time is going to be very, very critical for certain business decisions to happen. Let's now log into the Windchill system and understand how the change management system works inside Windchill. I'm going to, as you all aware, Windchill is a web-based system, so I can access that using the Internet Explorer. I use my login credentials, and what you could see is the home page here, which talks about the assignments, updates, and the checked out work. I'm going to quickly customize this page and include some more important information called as a notebook, which gives me quick links of the important product information. And this is called as a navigator tab where I can browse and access product information. I'm going to access the 4WD loader assembly, and the structure of that assembly is what is getting loaded now. So this is the bill of material structure, and if you could see here, there is a triangle here that indicates that there is change happening in the system. This is very, very important in terms of any PDM operation, because if there is going to be a user who is going to modify this, he is going to be notified well before that there is a change happening, and he needs to be cautious about making any more changes to this assembly. So that's how Windchill helps users to plan their design modifications by informing them in ahead the changes that happens inside the system. So let's quickly go into the users tab and understand the structure in a more detailed fashion. This particular table view helps us to understand the supplier information, and if you could see that the AML and the AVL supplier information is being displayed on, and we could also look at the visual response of this assembly. This is basically due to a visualization technology called as CreoView inbuilt in Windchill that helps us to view assemblies without the native CAD application present inside the system. So let's look at the cab assembly. So it's going to highlight that inside the visualization window. And we're also looking at the front axle. And now let's go and quickly search for another part here, so I could quickly add the type of the part I need to search. I'm actually looking for a document as well as a CAD document, so I'm quickly looking for specific types here, and I'm going to look for a rock bucket assembly. So the moment I type the name and I filter my search only to a EPM document, part document, so it's going to give me a document, a drawing, and then a part of the rock bucket. So this is the structure of the rock bucket assembly, and then going to the details, we're going to look at the rock bucket itself in CreoView, and also look at the attributes of the assembly. Let's look at the bucket in a detailed fashion inside CreoView. It's a lightweight visualization window, so it's going to open the assemblies much faster than expected. And once the parts are loaded, you will be able to do a lot of operations inside the CreoView technology. So let's quickly hide the unwanted windows, and having seen the rock bucket assembly, let's exit CreoView. We're going to look at CreoView in multiple portions in this demonstration. So now let's look at the changes that has happened with respect to this particular loader assembly. This can be done using something called as change monitor. The change monitor is going to help us understand the open problem reports, the open change requests, the open change notices with respect to a particular thing. So the key benefits with respect to the first step that we saw is how Windchill is able to give easy access to the latest information in terms of the actual product using ClearView, in terms of attributes, in terms of bill of material structure. We are also able to quickly search for the products using the advanced search functionalities that we were looking at. So let's move on to the next section of the demo, which is the first one. In fact, it's called as identify the need. Identify the need is basically where we want to log in a particular change request to the system. This is done using something called as problem report, which helps us to log in the issues, the problems, the enhancement requests that we need for that particular product. Now that is the stepping stone for every change management system to start with. We're going to look at that in detail now. So let's go back to the Windchill screen, and what we're going to do is search for, before I create a problem report, I want to search for existing problem reports. So I'm looking for a saved search here. The moment I hit that, I understand that there are 3 problem reports that it shows me. What I want to refine the search, and I'm going to quickly edit the search criteria, add a new criteria called as description, and I'm going to see if there is any problem report created for a skid plate. So the moment I add that and search, I couldn't find anything. That means there's nothing created for a skid plate in terms of a problem report. So let me go back and go with the standard search that we were searching before. So I'm looking for all the prototype build issues, that is of P01812. So there are 3 problem reports, and let's open one. So this problem report that we've opened is a prototype issue problem report, and if you could see, there's a lot of information that it shows us. It shows us the affected objects, which is the rock bucket assembly itself, which we opened a few minutes back, and the problem report is related to version 1.3, but there has already been a change to the rock bucket assembly, and it's now at 2.7. That means there has already been an evolution with respect to the rock bucket based on the problem report that we saw. So this helps us to understand the existing problem reports before we even create one, and also helps us to understand what are the changes done to the rock bucket assembly based on the problem report. The key benefits here, as we saw, is again improved visibility in terms of existing problem reports and how it is connected to the parts and so on. And we are also able to understand the history of these by looking at what change requests or change notices were created for this problem report. So let's move to the next step, which is investigating the need. This involves investigating the problem report that was created and creating a change request for the same. This forms the second step in the change management process. So let's look at it in detail. We are now going to go back to the Windchill screen and investigate a change that has happened inside the system. I'm going to go to my assignments tab and look at some of my assignments that I have for today. And if you could see, there is an audit request that has come up for me for a particular product inside the 844J loader. I'm going to open that and see what's in it in detail. So this is basically related to a change notice that I need to audit it. Before I could complete the task, let me open the change notice. and understand what it is in detail. So this change notice is basically to update the cab chassis. So there is a change request related to the change notice, which I'm trying to open now. And now this change request has got a lot of information, a lot of rich information. It has got some annotations with it. Let's open the first annotation. The first annotation that we're opening is basically a structure annotation. The structure annotation, in the sense, this tells you from the bill of material per se what is the change that is required. So if you could see here in detail, the back housing, the original back removed, and a new back housing is to be added to this particular assembly. So that is the change that has been recommended for this particular change request. So this explains you in visual method what exactly the change that has to be done. And now let's look at the second annotation. In Creo view, this is going to be another visual representation of the change that we want to make. This is again, now if you could see here, there is a markup done on this assembly that shows that they need to have two mounting boards and replace the existing mounting board as shown. So this again explains to the manufacturing person what changes that needs to be done on the assembly. So having understood the two changes, having understood the change, let's understand the affected objects. I'm going to open the monitor assembly, which has to be changed. So this is a monitor assembly which is an A5 version, and this is the structure of that assembly, and it also indicates that there is a change that needs to be done to this assembly. Let's go to a different view of this monitor assembly, which is a sourcing view. And if you could see here, it tells us the supplier information, that the back housing is basically sourced. So it clearly tells that there is a preferred supplier for that. And the PCB mech assembly is also something that we need to look upon. So let's open that assembly. And understand the manufacturing information there. So this is basically being sourced from a company where the part information is TXI 1000, and the manufacturing status has been approved for that particular part. And let's go back to the monitor assembly itself. So this explains us that this monitor assembly is a combination of internally manufactured parts plus sourced parts. The PCB assembly was something that we need to source from another vendor. And we're also going to understand what are all the documents and the CAD documents associated with the structure. So we want to select all the parts, and let's see what CAD documents and documents are associated with this particular bill of material structure. So these are the various documents, and there are some pro engineer parts, there's a pro engineer assemblies associated with this bill of material structure. So if you're going to affect any change to any of this part here as a part of a change management system, it is also showing us the ECAD assemblies associated with it. So any change made to this structure is going to affect all these CAD parts as well. So we need to be aware of this information before we affect any change to the structure or to any of these parts. So Windchill gives us the clear information of all the associated members, the associated supplier information, the associated document information, and so on, which helps us to plan our change effectively. expand the bill of material to show its sub-level assemblies as well. We're also going to look at the distribution targets. These distribution targets are the one that talks about the ERP integration. It tells us what ERP information is being moved to from this particular assembly. So we're going to look at that. We're also looking at where the back housing is being used. It's being used at the monitor level assembly, and the monitor is rather used at the monitor console assembly, and the monitor console assembly is also used in the main assembly. So the various information also is very critical before you make a change to the main monitor assembly. And we are now going to look at what are the change requests and the change notices that are associated with this monitor assembly. The 0085 is the change that we are looking at all this while is associated with the monitor assembly. So that information is also linked to the part. So this gives us a clear understanding that there is always a linkage between the part and the change request at all the times, giving the user a clear-cut information on what changes are affecting what parts at any point of time. So the key benefits in this step that we were looking at is the reduction in time in terms of locating product information. We were able to quickly switch from monitor to the PCB assemblies to the change request in short period of time, and since everything was linked to each other, so we were able to understand the chain in terms of how these business objects are related to each other. We were also able to understand the complete information about the change request right from the annotations that were associated to it, and also the bill of material structure that was associated to the change request. And we were also able to understand whether there were any other change requests that was associated to that particular assembly, and what all were the change notices that was released with respect to the change request. Now the third stage is basically called the change planning, which helps us to understand how the change is going to be implemented now. Once the change request is approved by the change review board, a change notice is created, and then implementation tasks are planned for this change notice, which involves updating the mechanical design, updating the electronic design if any, updating the software design, updating the tooling required for manufacturing the changed part, informing the information to the supplier. So there's going to be a lot of implementation tasks that is associated with the particular change. We're going to look at that in detail of how Windchill helps us to manage the same. So let's look at the change notice for the change request that we've been investigating all this while now. So this is the change notice for the change request. It has an implementation plan related to it. So it has got three implementation tasks. One is MCAD, ECAD, and the third is on the document front. So let's look at the first change task. Before we do that, let's understand the information available on the change notice. The first one is the change cost analysis, which is a document attached and tells us how the change affects the cost of the product. So let's open the first implementation task, which is related to MCAD. So the affected objects is the back housing. So the drawing of it, and also the monitor assembly. So the back house drawing, the back house models are being added as affected, and the resulting objects. Now, if you could clearly see here, the version has changed from A2 to B2, and we're now quickly going to compare the informations. So let's quickly say select all for the main assembly, the monitor assembly. And if you could clearly see here, it tells me the changes in the part. If you could clearly see here, the back housing is changed from 001 to 200, the new back housing assembly. The related documents are getting updated, the related CAD documents are getting updated, and also the reference documents are getting updated. So this is an information compare report that Windchill gives us as a part of this change management system. So if you could also clearly understand that the back housing assembly is being shared. Let's open the assembly, the back housing part rather, and we're going to investigate additional information. So let's create a new tab and look at the project status information. So this explains us that this particular CAD assembly is being shared. Let's rename this tab first. Is being if you could look at this, you can understand that this particular assembly is shared to the project called Monitor Housing Mold Design. This is done to basically share this information to a supplier. Windchill Project Link has a unique capability of enabling customers to share product information to suppliers in a very, very secure manner. So let's look that in detail. So let's open the project called as a Monitor Housing Mold Design, which is shared to a supplier for him to modify the mold required for that. Let's quickly look at the plan of that particular project. And also look at the team of the particular project. So if you could see here, there is the supplier called Simon is involved in this project as a part of the project team. And now we're opening this particular back housing in Creo parametric to see what are the changes that we're going to make in it. This is the Pro Engineer model of that particular back housing. So let's investigate that in the CAD application itself. And we are now going to look at the second task, which is 0082, which is related to ECAD. It's a well-known fact that Windchill also can manage ECAD information effectively with related to a product. So we're looking at the implementation tasks that are involved in terms of ECAD assembly, the PCB assembly rather, and those are the affected objects. And let's look at that in detail. Now we're going back to also see the third implementation task, which is the document related one. This helps us to understand the affected documents with respect to this change and the resulting objects of it. So the PDF copy, the HTML copy, and the operator's manual is getting changed because of the change. So let's open the PDF copy in Creo view. And so this is the operator manual. Page 5 of this particular manual shows us an ISO draw illustration that has been directly taken in from PTC's documentation technology called as ArborText, which helps us to document product information effectively. So the PDF was a resultant of this particular ArborText editor information. So what you see here is an illustration of the monitor, the back housing, which tells us clearly the representation of the back housing. So we could zoom in and look at the contours in detail. We could also pan the object inside ArborText. Okay. Now let's go back into the change notice that we've been investigating all this while. So having understood the implementation tasks that are involved with this change notice, let's look at the attachments related to this change notice. And one of the attachments is basically a drawing comparison between the original back housing and the new back housing that's designed for this change. So let's open that in CreoView again. So you can see here there are two drawings with respect to this CreoView. So this is the model of the back housing, and we're now going to open the drawings related to that. So let's open the first drawing. And once we start comparing both the drawings, you could see that the red color indicates the changes in the first drawing, and the green color indicates the changes in the second drawing. So it clearly helps us to understand that one of the mounting boards is removed and there are a couple of mounting boards added. So this is basically a comparison report that CreoView helps us to get, and this is on the model front. We're comparing the two models. So it's basically superimposing one model on the other and understanding the differences. But most importantly, the drawing comparison is also a part of CreoView MCAD, which is a licensed product with PTC. So the key benefits in terms of this step is a very simple user interface in terms of understanding the information regarding change notice. The user interface also extends its simplicity in terms of creating implementation tasks that would be split as MCAD, ECAD, manufacturing, and so on. It also helps us to quickly plan the changes effectively, and each and every implementation task carries its own approval process. So it helps the change audit also to happen smoothly because each and every implementation task has its own approval cycle. Let's move to the fourth step, which is the actual change implementation. Here we're talking about how the change is going to be completed in terms of the change audit, and how the reports get updated in terms of the change audit that happens. Let's go back to the system and approve the assignment that I have to audit a change. Let me go back to my assignments tab. And look at the assignment I have on the audit front. and I can set up participants for me to approve this, but I'm going to complete the change myself. So the changes have been reviewed, so I add my comment and then I complete the task. So the moment I complete the task, the change gets completed for me. Let's quickly go back and look at the change monitor and see the effect of the change audit that I completed. Now if you could quickly see that the change has been completed, and it immediately shows up in my change graph that one change notice was completed within the stipulated time period. So this is an intuitive graph that helps manufacturing product development organizations understand the number of changes that has been approved in a specific time period, the number of change requests that came for a specific time period, and so on. So now let's look at the updates related to this change. If you could see here, the change notice is changed to a resolved state. It's changed to a resolved state. The change notice, the change request is also changed to a resolved state, and all the implementation tasks that was related to the change notice is also moved to the resolved state. And we go deeper into the change task and look at the affecting and the resulting objects. All the parts have been released. The newer parts that were created as a part of this change has been released. So which clearly helps us to understand that the change has been completed. And let's look at the monitor assembly, the structure of the monitor assembly. And compare it with the original, the older version of the monitor assembly. So I'm just going to do a compare structure here with the latest one and the older one that we were using to make the change. So I have something called as baseline. This is where configurations comes into picture. Assembly configurations can be managed with something called as baseline. Baseline is a snapshot of a version of the assembly. When the monitor assembly was going through a change, we created a baseline to capture the version at that point of time. So that particular version of the assembly is what we're going to compare with the latest and see what changes happened in the assembly. Now this is where configuration management becomes key in terms of the complete change process. So let's compare this baseline version of the monitor assembly with the latest. So let me select that, and on the right hand side I have the latest information, and this is going to quickly tell me that the 001 back housing part is removed in the latest one. The 001 back housing part is removed in the latest one, and instead we have the 200 back housing part that's added in the latest one. So this gives you a clear-cut comparison of the assembly versions. So the key benefits in this particular step is how that when a change audit is completed, all the related change tasks have been resolved, have been moved to the resolve mode rather, and how we could compare the new assembly version with the old assembly configuration and look at the changes done there. And we also saw how intuitive the change reports were in terms of updating itself in terms of the change. Once a change audit was completed, the report quickly updated and showed us that there was one change notice completed during the specific amount of time. So this helps us to have, as was been telling for the last 40 minutes, how a chain of reaction happens when one step is completed. So the last step is the physical implementation of the change, where we're going to understand how this particular assembly is being uh, distributed to the ERP system, because this change information has to be communicated to the ERP system for further manufacturing processes to take place. And we will also look at how this particular information is being moved to the suppliers in terms of um, collaboration. As I was informing you in few minutes before, while the demo was happening, how Windchill helps us to share information to suppliers in terms of collaboration. Windchill Project Link basically has something called as a virtual space by which we can effectively share information from a product to a project link space and enable the suppliers to access the data. We can give ad hoc access control in terms of allowing the vendor to download the data, or he could only read it but not make any modifications to it. The advantages you get by this is you keep a track of what data is being shared to the supplier, and when he makes any changes to it, we have all the control to approve the change and move it to our basic product design. And it also helps us not to affect the entire product because of a supplier part. So this is a very effective mechanism by which we can talk to suppliers, collaborate with them, and make them involved in the product development early in the process, which is going to save a lot of time in terms of the product development process as such. So let's look at the data that's been shared to the supplier. So it's been shared under a folder called as PCB data, and these are the information that's been shared: the schematic layout of the PCB, the Gerber data, and also the layout information. And those have been already modified by the supplier, and they are in the release state right now. And we can also understand which supplier it was shared by going into the role and understanding which supplier has this information. So this particular information is being shared to a contract manufacturer called Chris and also a supplier called Simon. So the key benefits out of from this step is basically how we could automatically release and communicate the change results to the ERP system, and also we saw how a product could be effectively shared to a supplier though a change is happening inside the product, and how information could be tracked in terms of which supplier has the data and so on and so forth. So we have come to the end of this demonstration. Let's quickly summarize what we saw in today's demonstration of change in configuration management. We first looked at the various steps of the change in configuration management. We started identifying the need, and then investigating the need, and then we were looking at how change planning happens, and then how change implementation happens, and how the change is physically implemented at site with respect to communicating with the ERP and also informing the suppliers about the change. We were also looking at how Windchill could help us understand key change business objects like problem report, change request, change notices, change tasks, also how the product structure, how the various information, how the visualization technologies like ClearView helps us to investigate the change quickly, effectively, and at the same time more precisely before we actually make a change Windchill plays an important role in